Commander Jake Morrison stared at the readings on his screen and rubbed his tired eyes. 3 months of deep space surveys had turned up nothing but empty space and dead rocks. The research vessel Horizon's Edge drifted through the outer rim of human territory, its sensors scanning every piece of debris larger than a coffee cup. "Jake, you need to see this," Lisa Rodriguez called from the pilot's seat. Her voice carried that edge it always got when something was wrong. Jake pushed himself away from his workstation and floated over to the bridge. The artificial gravity had been acting up for weeks and they were all getting used to moving in zero-G. Lisa pointed at her navigation display, where a massive object appeared as a bright dot against the star field. "That wasn't there an hour ago," she said. Danny Walsh looked up from his communications panel. His red hair was sticking up in all directions from the zero gravity. "I'm getting some kind of signal from it. Really weird stuff, like someone trying to talk but using math instead of words." Amy Carter pushed off from the science station and joined them at the front windows. Through the reinforced glass, they could see a structure that hurt to look at directly. It was huge, maybe the size of Earth's moon, and it seemed to be made of crystal that bent light in impossible ways. "How did something that big just appear?" Jake asked. "Maybe it was always there and we just couldn't see it," Amy said. She was already taking readings with her handheld scanner. "The crystal structure is doing something to our instruments. It might have some kind of stealth field." The ship's main computer chimed with an incoming transmission. Danny's eyes went wide as he looked at his screens. "Commander, they're sending us something. Some kind of language program. It's rewriting itself as it downloads." Jake felt his stomach tighten. First contact with alien life was supposed to happen near Earth with proper protocols and backup from the fleet. Not out here in the middle of nowhere with just 4 people on a research ship. "Let it through," he said, "but keep it isolated from our main systems." The transmission finished downloading, and suddenly the ship's speakers crackled to life with a voice that sounded almost human but not quite right. "Greetings, species of the 3rd planet from the Yellow Star. We are the Zephyrian Collective. We come with an invitation of great honor." Jake looked at his crew. Lisa had her hand on the controls, ready to run if needed. Danny was recording everything. Amy was still taking readings of the crystal structure. "This is Commander Jake Morrison of the human vessel Horizon's Edge," Jake said into the comm. "We're listening. Your species has been observed from a distance. You show great promise for participation in our grand galactic tournament. This is a celebration held once every 100 rotations of our home world. Species from across the galaxy come to demonstrate their unique gifts." The voice paused, and Jake could hear what sounded like multiple voices talking in the background, in a language that hurt his ears. "We would be honored to host representatives of humanity at our tournament. You would compete alongside hundreds of other species in demonstrations of your cultural excellence." Lisa leaned close to Jake's ear. "Sounds too good to be true," she whispered. Jake nodded but kept his voice level. "What kind of competitions?" "Each species demonstrates what makes them special. The luminary creates sculptures from pure light. The tidal folk perform water dances that last for days. The hive dancers move in patterns that tell the history of their people." Amy was frowning at her readings. She held up her scanner and showed Jake the display. The crystal structure was hollow inside, with what looked like cities and transportation systems. This wasn't just a ship, it was a mobile world. "What would humanity be expected to demonstrate?" Jake asked. "Your species shows great skill in physical challenges. We have observed your entertainment broadcasts. You would compete in the physical demonstration category alongside other warrior species." Danny looked up from his station with concern written across his face. He had been monitoring their conversation with Earth Command, but this far out any message would take hours to reach home. "We would need to discuss this with our government," Jake said. "Of course. We will remain in this location for 7 of your days to allow for proper delegation. We look forward to welcoming humanity to our celebration." The transmission ended, leaving the 4 humans floating in silence on their bridge. "Warrior species," Lisa said. "I don't like the sound of that." Amy was still studying her readings. "Jake, look at this. I'm detecting at least 50 different atmospheric compositions inside that structure. They're not just hosting one species, they're hosting dozens." "Danny, how long until we can get a message to Earth?" Jake asked. Danny checked his calculations. 4 hours each way, but they'll want to send a full diplomatic team, and that could take weeks. Jake stared out at the crystal structure. Something about this felt wrong, but he couldn't put his finger on what. The aliens seemed friendly enough, and a galactic tournament sounded like exactly the kind of opportunity humanity had been hoping for since they first reached the stars. 3 days later, the diplomatic ship New Horizon arrived with Ambassador Kate Phillips and a small team of advisors. Colonel Ryan Hayes led the military contingent, which included some of Earth's best athletes and former soldiers. The plan was simple: attend the tournament, make a good impression, and establish humanity's place in galactic society. Jake watched from the bridge as the ambassador's shuttle docked with the alien structure. Everything looked normal, but he couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into something much more dangerous than a cultural celebration. He was right to be worried. Ambassador Kate Phillips walked through the crystal corridors of the Nexus Arena with growing unease. The walls around her bent light in strange ways, making her feel dizzy. Behind her, Colonel Ryan Hayes kept his hand near his sidearm, though the Zephyrians had assured them that weapons were not needed during the cultural festivities. The human delegation had arrived 2 days ago and been given quarters in what the aliens called the participant wing. The rooms were comfortable enough, though clearly designed for beings much taller than humans. Everything had to be climbed rather than simply entered. "Ambassador, you must meet the other participants," said their Zephyrian guide, whose name sounded like wind chimes when spoken aloud. The alien was nearly 8 feet tall, with skin that looked like frosted glass and 6 eyes arranged around its elongated head. When it moved, it seemed to flow rather than walk. They entered a vast common area where dozens of alien species mingled together. Kate saw the Luminari first, beings that looked like they were made of colored light shifting and changing as they moved. Near them, the tidal folk swam through pools of water that somehow stayed contained without walls or barriers. "Fascinating," Kate murmured to Ryan. "Look how peaceful they all seem." Ryan nodded, but his eyes were scanning for exits and potential threats. Something felt off about this whole situation, though he couldn't explain what. A group of insectoid aliens approached them. These were the hive dancers, moving in perfect synchronization as if controlled by a single mind. When they spoke, their voices blended together into a musical harmony. "Welcome, new participants. We are excited to see what humans will contribute to the tournament." Kate smiled diplomatically. "We're honored to be included. What will your people be demonstrating?" "We will perform the dance of creation, showing how our ancestors built the first hives. It takes 3 days and involves all 400 members of our delegation." As they spoke, Kate noticed something disturbing. None of the other species seemed to have any weapons, armor, or even tools that looked remotely military. The Luminari carried what appeared to be art supplies made of light. The tidal folk had instruments that produced underwater music. Even the most exotic species seemed focused entirely on peaceful arts. Ben Tucker and Carla Stone, the 2 former Marines in their group, were talking quietly with Tyler Brooks, the gymnast they had brought to demonstrate human athletic ability. All 3 looked uncomfortable. "Colonel?" Ben approached Ryan quietly. "We need to talk. Something's not right here." Ryan excused himself from the ambassador and followed Ben to a quiet corner. Carla and Tyler joined them, along with Nina Patterson, the Olympic swimmer. "What's the problem?" Ryan asked. "Look around," Carla said. "Every other species here is talking about art, music, dancing, or some other peaceful activity. But the aliens keep asking us about our combat demonstrations." Tyler nodded. "One of the Zephyrians asked me if I knew any death moves from gymnastics. When I said no, it seemed confused. And they keep talking about our weapons," Nina added. "They gave us these things they call ceremonial equipment, but they look like real military gear." Ryan felt his blood chill. "Show me." They walked back to the human quarters where Dr. Helen Clark was examining a collection of items the Zephyrians had provided. The xenobiologist looked up as they entered, her face pale. "Colonel, we have a serious problem," she said. "These aren't ceremonial weapons. This rifle is fully functional, So is this combat armor, and look at this. She held up a data pad showing tournament schedules. I've been studying the event listings. Everyone else is scheduled for performances in theaters, art galleries, or cultural centers. But look at what they have planned for us. Ryan read the schedule and felt sick. The human events were all listed in something called the combat arena. Terms like survival demonstration, tactical exhibition, and elimination rounds filled the page. There's more, Helen continued. I've been analyzing the tournament's history using their database. This event has been running for thousands of years, but I can't find records of many species that participated in the physical categories. They just disappear from the records after their first tournament. Ambassador Phillips entered the room, having noticed their absence from the social gathering. What's going on here? Ryan showed her the schedule and Helen's findings. Kate's diplomatic training kicked in, but even she couldn't hide her shock. Are you saying this isn't actually a cultural tournament? She asked. I think they believe it is, Helen said. But they have a very different idea of what human culture involves. I've been monitoring their communications, and they keep referring to human entertainment broadcasts they've intercepted. I think they've been watching our movies and television shows. Action movies, Tyler said, understanding dawning on his face. They think human culture is violence. It gets worse, Helen continued. I found records of other warrior species, the saurians, the mineral folk, dozens of others. They all participated in these physical demonstrations. Most of them died in the arena. The survivors were kept as permanent entertainment. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. They weren't here as cultural ambassadors. They were here as gladiators. We need to contact Earth immediately, Kate said. Too late for that, Ryan replied. We're scheduled for our first demonstration tomorrow morning, and according to this schedule, it's going to be broadcast live across their entire civilization. Xiao? Tucker checked his sidearm and found it still functional. How many security personnel do they have? That's just it, Helen said. They don't have any. These species are all completely peaceful. They've never had to deal with violence directly. They watch it like we watch nature documentaries. Then, we can fight our way out, Carla suggested, and prove their point about human savagery. Kate shook her head. There has to be another way. Ryan studied the arena schematics on the datapad. The facility was massive, with multiple environments and what looked like sophisticated holographic systems. The aliens had built the perfect gladiatorial complex, but they had no idea what they were actually dealing with. Maybe there is another way, he said slowly. They expect us to be violent, but they don't understand what human violence actually looks like when it's organized and purposeful. What do you mean? Kate asked. Ryan looked around at his team, soldiers, athletes, a scientist, and a diplomat. Not the kind of group anyone would expect to work together, but exactly the kind of diverse team that humans excelled at forming. They want a demonstration of human culture, he said. Let's give them one they'll never forget. The human team stood at the entrance to the combat arena, looking out at what the Zephyrians had prepared for their first demonstration. The space was enormous, with multiple levels and terrain that changed from forest to desert to urban ruins. Holographic displays showed thousands of alien spectators watching from safe viewing areas. Jake Morrison had joined the group after docking his research ship with the station. He stood next to Colonel Ryan Hayes, both men studying the arena like generals planning a battle. The rest of the team spread out behind them. Soldiers, athletes, scientists, and even Derek Palmer, an artist who had been brought along to show human creativity. Remember the plan, Ryan said quietly. They expect us to fight each other or charge blindly at whatever they throw at us. Instead, we do what humans do best. Work together, Jake finished. The arena floor was already active. Holographic enemies moved through the terrain. Some looked like wild animals. Others resembled armored soldiers from various species. In the center of the space, a glowing timer showed they had 1 hour to complete whatever challenge the aliens had designed. A Zephyrian voice echoed through the arena. Welcome, humans, to your first cultural demonstration. You will face the trials of combat, showing your species' natural abilities in warfare. Begin when ready. Ben Tucker hefted his rifle and checked his equipment. Beside him, Carla Stone did the same. Both Marines had fought in real battles, but this felt different. They weren't just fighting for their own lives. They were performing for an audience that thought violence was entertainment. "Tyler, Nina, what do you see up there?" Ryan asked. The gymnast and swimmer had already started scouting. Tyler was using his athletic skills to climb impossible angles on the arena walls, while Nina had found water features that the aliens probably thought were just decoration. "Multiple levels, lots of hiding spots, and the holographic projectors are vulnerable," Tyler called down. "If we can reach them, we can probably shut down their fake enemies." "The water systems connect the whole arena," Nina reported. "They're not just for show, they're part of the environmental controls." Dr. Helen Clark was scanning the arena with her instruments. "The holograms are solid light constructs. They can hurt us, but they're being generated by predictable patterns. If we map their behavior, we can stay ahead of them." Marcus Johnson, the engineer, was already working on the equipment the aliens had given them. "These weapons have more features than they told us about. I can modify them, maybe even connect them to the arena's systems." Sophie Lee checked her medical supplies. The aliens had provided her with basic first aid equipment, but she had smuggled in additional supplies that might be useful for more than just treating injuries. Derek Palmer seemed out of place among the military personnel and athletes, but he was studying the arena with an artist's eye. "The layout follows aesthetic principles, not tactical ones. They built this to look dramatic, not to be militarily effective." Ryan nodded. "Everyone clear on their roles?" The team confirmed. They had spent the night planning something the aliens had never seen before: organized human teamwork applied to combat. The timer began counting down. Immediately, holographic enemies began moving toward their position. The spectators in the viewing areas leaned forward, expecting to see humans scatter and fight desperately for survival. Instead, the humans did something completely unexpected. They formed up in a defensive position and began moving as a coordinated unit. Ben and Carla took point, using their military training to identify threats and create safe paths for the team. But instead of just shooting everything in sight, they were gathering information and calling it back to the others. "Pattern alpha creatures moving from the east. They attack in groups of 3 but avoid water," Carla reported. "Confirmed." "Pattern beta units coming from the north. They're faster but predictable," Ben added. Tyler and Nina moved ahead as scouts, using routes that the arena designers never intended anyone to use. Tyler found that the climbing surfaces had maintenance access points, while Nina discovered that the water systems could be used for rapid movement between areas. Marcus began modifying their equipment in real time, turning simple weapons into tools for controlling the arena itself. He connected his modified rifle to an environmental control panel, and suddenly the lighting in one section changed completely. "I can control parts of the arena," he announced. "The aliens designed this like a theater stage, not a military installation." Helen was tracking the holographic enemies with her scientific instruments, mapping their behavior patterns and finding weaknesses that pure military thinking might have missed. "The enemy AIs are sophisticated, but they're following pre-programmed responses. If we act outside their expected parameters, they get confused," she said. Sophie was doing more than just providing medical support. She had analyzed the arena's atmosphere and found ways to use the environmental systems to their advantage. "The air recycling system can carry chemical markers. I can make smoke screens or even mild sedatives if needed," she reported. Derek, meanwhile, was providing insights that surprised everyone. His artistic background helped him see patterns in the arena design that the others missed. "They're trying to tell a story with this space. Every section represents a different type of conflict from their entertainment databases. If we understand the story, we can predict what comes next." The alien audience watched in growing fascination as the humans moved through the arena like no species they had ever seen. Instead of individual warriors fighting desperately, they saw a team working together with almost mechanical precision. When holographic enemies attacked, the humans didn't just fight them, they analyzed them, adapted to them, and then used the arena's own systems against them. They turned decorative water features into tactical advantages. They used artistic lighting as camouflage. They converted the arena's own holographic projectors into tools for misdirection. Most shocking of all, when one team member was injured by a holographic attack, The others didn't abandon them or fight harder out of rage. Instead, they smoothly adjusted their tactics to protect their wounded teammate while Sophie provided medical care without missing a beat. The aliens had expected to see savagery. Instead, they were witnessing something their peaceful species had never developed: the ability to bring order and cooperation to chaos and violence. The second day of demonstrations brought new challenges. The arena had been reconfigured overnight, and now the humans faced something far more complex than holographic enemies. Captain Sam Richards had arrived with additional military personnel, but what they found in the arena made even the experienced Navy SEAL pause. Cages lined one wall of the arena, and inside were real beings, not holograms. These were survivors from other warrior species that had participated in previous tournaments. A massive reptilian creature with scars covering his hide watched them with intelligent eyes. Nearby, a being made of living crystal fragments sat motionless but alert. "They're not enemies," Dr. Helen Clark said after scanning them with her instruments. "They're prisoners. Some of these beings have been here for decades." Danny Walsh had managed to hack deeper into the station's communication systems during the night. What he found changed everything they understood about their situation. "Colonel, you need to hear this," Danny said through their private comm channel. "I've been monitoring the alien broadcasts. This tournament isn't just entertainment for the Zephyrians, it's being transmitted across their entire galactic network. Billions of beings are watching us right now." Jake Morrison studied the new arena layout. The aliens had created what looked like a small city, complete with buildings, vehicles, and infrastructure. But scattered throughout were the caged beings from other species, and the humans were expected to fight their way through this urban environment. "What exactly do they want us to do?" Ambassador Kate Phillips asked their Zephyrian guide. "Today you will demonstrate advanced human combat techniques. The scenario is urban pacification. You must secure the area and eliminate all resistance." The guide gestured toward the caged beings. "These are your opponents. They have been chosen from the finest warriors of their respective species. Victory in combat against them will show the galaxy the true strength of humanity." Ryan Hayes felt his stomach turn. The aliens expected them to kill prisoners for entertainment. But as he looked at his team, he saw something else in their eyes. Not horror, but determination. "We understand," Ryan said calmly. "Give us a few minutes to prepare." As soon as the Zephyrian left, the humans gathered in a tight circle. "We're not killing prisoners," Ben Tucker said flatly. "Agreed," Ryan replied. "But we need to make this look convincing to the audience while we figure out how to get everyone out of here." Marcus Johnson had been studying the cage mechanisms. "I can open them remotely, but we'll need a distraction." "I have an idea," Derek Palmer said. Everyone turned to look at the artist, surprised. "They're broadcasting this across the galaxy, right? That means we have the biggest audience in galactic history. What if we use that?" Sophie Lee was already checking her medical supplies. "If we're going to free prisoners, some of them might need immediate medical attention. I can treat multiple species, but I'll need help." Tyler Brooks had been examining the urban environment. "The buildings are real, but they're designed like movie sets. There are hidden passages and camera angles everywhere. We can use those to move the prisoners without the audience seeing everything." Nina Patterson found water access points throughout the fake city. "I can move through the drainage systems. If we need to evacuate people quickly, I can guide them through routes the aliens don't know about." The plan they developed was risky, but it was perfectly human in its complexity. They would put on a show for the galactic audience. But the real message would be something the peaceful aliens had never considered: that true strength meant protecting others. When the demonstration began, the humans moved into the urban environment with military precision. But instead of heading straight for the caged prisoners, they began systematically clearing the fake city of hazards and establishing safe zones. Captain Sam Richards led a team that secured building after building, but instead of searching for enemies to fight, they were setting up medical stations and safe houses. The alien audience watched in confusion as the humans seemed more concerned with civilian infrastructure than with combat. Then Marcus Johnson reached the first cage. Instead of forcing the prisoner to fight, he opened the cage and stepped back, with his hands visible and empty. The reptilian warrior inside was massive, easily 8 feet tall with claws that could tear through metal. The alien audience held their breath, expecting to see brutal combat. Instead, Sophie Lee approached the cage with her medical scanner. "Are you injured?" she asked in the universal translator language. "We're here to help." The reptilian being stared at her for a long moment, then spoke in a voice like grinding stone. "Help? You are supposed to kill me for their entertainment." "That's not going to happen," Jake Morrison said, stepping up beside Sophie. "We're getting you out of here." What happened next sent shockwaves through the watching alien civilizations. One by one, the humans freed the prisoners. But instead of chaos or fighting, they saw something unprecedented. Different species working together. The crystal being, who called itself Shard, had engineering knowledge that complemented Marcus's skills. The reptilian warrior, named Corax, had tactical experience that impressed even the Navy SEALs. Other freed prisoners contributed their own expertise. Dr. Helen Clark discovered that many of these beings had been scientists, artists, or leaders in their home societies before being forced into gladiatorial combat. The aliens had taken their best people and turned them into entertainment. "How long have you been here?" Ryan asked Corax. 15 cycles of their world. I was a military advisor for my People's Defense Council. They took me during a diplomatic mission. As more prisoners were freed, the human team found themselves leading a growing coalition of different species. But this wasn't a mob or an army. It was an organized resistance built on human principles of cooperation and mutual protection. The alien audience across the galaxy watched in stunned silence as species that had been bitter enemies in the arena began working together under human leadership. The humans weren't just demonstrating combat skills. They were teaching the concept of honorable warfare to beings who had forgotten what it meant to fight for something other than survival. Danny Walsh had been monitoring the Galactic broadcasts. "Colonel, we're getting responses from across the galaxy. Some of the alien governments are demanding to know what happened to their missing people. The Zephyrians had created their perfect gladiatorial tournament, but they had made one critical mistake. They had given humanity an audience, and humans knew exactly how to use an audience to change the world. The final day of the tournament was supposed to feature the grand finale, human contestants fighting each other to the death. Instead, the Zephyrians found themselves facing something they had never prepared for. The arena was full of freed prisoners from dozens of species, all organized under human leadership, and all refusing to participate in any more death matches. Jake Morrison stood in the center of the arena, addressing not just the Zephyrian authorities, but the billions of beings watching across the galaxy through the live broadcast. Behind him, representatives from 20 different species stood together, former prisoners who had been trapped in the tournament for years or even decades. "We know you're all watching," Jake said, looking directly into the broadcasting equipment. "You've been told this is entertainment, but we want you to see what's really happening here." Captain Sam Richards had spent the night working with Corax, the reptilian warrior, and Shard the crystal being to map out the entire station. What they found was horrifying. Hundreds more prisoners in different sections, some species thought extinct by their home governments, all kept as permanent entertainment for the Zephyrian collective. "Commander Phillips," Colonel Ryan Hayes said to the ambassador, "We have a situation." Kate Phillips was in the middle of heated negotiations with the Zephyrian leadership. The aliens were clearly panicking as their carefully controlled tournament spiraled out of their control. Their guide, the tall being with crystalline skin, kept shifting colors in what Helen Clark had identified as signs of extreme stress. The humans were supposed to demonstrate individual combat, the Zephyrian was saying. Instead, they have corrupted our entire cultural celebration. "Your cultural celebration involves kidnapping and murder," Kate replied firmly. "Our governments have been in contact. They want their people back." Danny Walsh was monitoring communications from across the galaxy. The response to the broadcasts had been immediate and overwhelming. Governments that had lost diplomatic missions, exploration teams, or cultural ambassadors were now demanding answers from the Zephyrian collective. "Colonel, we're getting support," Danny reported. 18 different planetary governments have confirmed that citizens shown in our broadcasts are people they reported missing. They're sending fleets to back up their demands. In the arena, the coalition of freed prisoners was doing something the Zephyrians found incomprehensible. Instead of fighting each other or trying to escape, they were working together to help the weakest among them. Sophie Lee had established a medical center where she was treating beings who had been injured in previous tournaments. Marcus Johnson was working with alien engineers to improve living conditions in their temporary shelter. Derek Palmer was documenting everything, creating a visual record that was being broadcast live to the watching galaxy. His artistic training helped him capture not just what was happening, but why it mattered. "Look at this," Derek said into the broadcasting equipment, showing the camera a group of different species sharing food and medical supplies. These beings were supposed to be enemies. Instead, they're taking care of each other. Tyler Brooks and Nina Patterson had found the station's detention levels, where hundreds more prisoners were being held. But instead of simply freeing them, the humans had organized a systematic evacuation that ensured everyone was accounted for and cared for. Dr. Helen Clark made the discovery that changed everything. Deep in the station's databases, she found records going back thousands of years. The Zephyrians hadn't started as kidnappers. They had genuinely believed they were hosting cultural exchanges. But over time, their fascination with violence had corrupted their peaceful nature. "They're addicts," Helen explained to the human leadership team. "Their species evolved without predators or conflict. Violence is completely foreign to them, which makes it incredibly fascinating. They started with voluntary participants, then moved to bribing people, and finally to outright kidnapping. So they're not evil," Jake said. "They're sick." "That doesn't excuse what they've done," Ryan replied, "but it might explain how to fix it." The confrontation came when the Zephyrian leadership demanded that the tournament continue as planned. They brought security forces, other species they had hired as guards. But these beings took one look at the organized coalition in the arena and refused to fight. "We will not attack people who are protecting prisoners," the security chief said. "This is not what we agreed to do." Ambassador Phillips stepped forward to address the Zephyrian leaders directly. "You have a choice," she said. "End this tournament permanently, release all prisoners, and work with us to establish genuine cultural exchange, or face the consequences of what you've created." "What consequences?" the lead Zephyrian asked. Jake gestured to the monitoring equipment that was broadcasting their conversation across the galaxy. "You've taught an entire generation of warrior species to work together. Every government that's lost people to your tournaments is now united against you, and they're all learning human tactics for cooperation and organized resistance." The Zephyrian leaders looked at their displays, showing the galactic response. Fleet after fleet was moving toward their position. More importantly, species that had been enemies for centuries were coordinating their efforts, all inspired by what they had seen humans accomplish. The resolution came not through violence, but through something the Zephyrians could understand: consequences for their actions. Faced with the united opposition of dozens of civilizations, all working together using principles they had learned from watching humans, the Zephyrian collective agreed to end the tournaments. The Nexus Arena was converted into a genuine cultural exchange center. The freed prisoners became ambassadors, teaching their species about cooperation and mutual aid. The Zephyrians, under careful supervision, began learning about healthy ways to satisfy their curiosity about other cultures. Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the horizon's edge, watching as ships from across the galaxy arrived to collect their people. The tournament was over, but something bigger had begun. "What do you think happens now?" Lisa Rodriguez asked. Jake smiled as he watched a Zephyrian delegation boarding a human ship to begin real cultural exchange. "Now they get to see what human culture actually looks like," he said. "Not the violence they expected, but the part that matters, how we take care of each other." The galaxy had wanted to see human strength. Instead, they learned what made humans truly dangerous: their ability to turn enemies into allies and their refusal to abandon anyone who needed help.